Ada awe Russia akakomono Putin tale Putin e bele kenda mune le po Putin awe le bidale hele wete omo Putin koko awe aketera jala pekena komo ye ate ye tase ye jika kidu ki wera yo akona rune itase mo dera munno wa kana
sizes in our territory, and not just in the south of the Russian Federation, but also in the Far East and in the North and in the Arctic. Simultaneously, military exercises were being held in different parts of the Russian Federation. At the very same time, the US was conducting military exercises in Alaska. Do you know anything about it? Probably not, but I'll tell you that I do know, and that is in direct proximity to our borders. But that's in your territory, on your land. We didn't even pay attention to it. What is happening now? Now, at our southern borders, there is a war game, Defender Europe. 40,000 personnel, 15,000 units of military equipment. Part of them have been airlifted from the US continent directly to our borders. Did we airlift any of our military technology to the US borders? No, we did not.
But many of those,
why are you worried?
Many of those exercises are a response to your actions, Mr. President. Do you worry that your opposition to NATO has actually strengthened it? For 6 years, NATO has spent more on defence.
That's some defense. Some defense. During the USSR era, Gorbachev, who is still, thank God, with us, you can ask him, got a promise, a verbal promise. However, it was a promise that there would be NATO expansion to the east. Where are those promises? 2 waves of expansion.
Where is that written down? Where is that promise written down?
Right. Well done.
Me.
Correct.
Ba.
Got you good. Well, congratulations. Of course, everything should be sealed and written on paper.
Aware Russia
akokone NATO to the east and bringing this infrastructure to our borders. And all of this before saying that we're the ones who have been acting aggressively? Why? On what basis? Did Russia, after the USSR collapsed, present any threat to the United States or European countries? We voluntarily withdrew our troops from Eastern Europe, leaving them just on empty land. Our people there, military personnel, lived there for decades in what was not normal conditions, including their children. We went to tremendous expenses. And what did we...
Akeda awe jigna megtama bagna ko khela majir jigna ba apugu ori to kolia awe tamela ka abdi wa nyulo athola monia tale tagsone awe tele tho jana altala chodo ba masana gadu bagna ko lete wimajiga awe te pyagiti le pa nyoklo mono be yoklo klwa klo me timila kon Gnar kowa putira sha kokone alana manachona chinlo ta siba hakogbe
we get in response. We got in response infrastructure next to our borders. And now you are saying that we're threatening to somebody. We're conducting war games on a regular basis, including sometimes surprise military exercises. Why should it worry the NATO partners? I just don't understand this.
Will you commit now not to send any further Russian troops into Ukrainian sovereign territory?
Look, did we say that we were planning to send our armed formations anywhere? We conducted war games in our territory. How can this not be clear? I'm saying it again because I want your audience to hear it. I want your listeners to hear it, both on the screens of their television sets and on the internet. We conducted military exercises in our territory. Imagine if we sent our troops into direct proximity to your borders. what would have been your response? We didn't do that. We did it in our territory. You conducted war games in Alaska, God bless you. But you had crossed an ocean, brought thousands of personnel and thousands of units of military equipment close to our borders, and yet you believe that we're acting aggressively, and somehow you're not. Just look at that. Pot calling the kettle black.
Moving on, the Biden administration has said that at your summit they will bring up the case of two US prisoners in Russia, Paul Whelan and Trevor Reed. They are two former Marines. Trevor Reed is suffering from COVID in prison. Why don't you release them ahead of the summit? Wouldn't that show goodwill?
advanced language mo awe pagna ramba chana tage redo ba yike tepya itilo achola abutala awe think
I know that we have certain US citizens who are in prison, have been convicted, but if one considers the number of Russian Federation citizens who are in US prisons, then these numbers don't even compare. The United States, in recent years, has made a habit of catching Russian Federation citizens in third countries and taking them in violation of all international legal norms and put them in prison.
Unless we can have more time, I'm very happy to keep going for another 30 minutes.
I control the time here, so don't worry about time. Your guy, the Marine, he's just a drunk and a troublemaker. As they say here, he got himself shit-faced on vodka and started a fight. Among other things,
I'm a Canadian anyway.
Hit a cop. It's nothing.
Remember, I'm Canadian. Remember.
As far as possible negotiations on this subject,
Russia, Putin.
Talked about.
Remember, I'm Canadian. Remember.
Raise the matter of our citizens in prison in the United States. Yes, it can be a specific conversation. Sure, we're happy to do it. Although it doesn't seem that the U.S. administration has raised that matter, but we're prepared to talk about that. Our pilot Yaroshenko has been in prison in the US for a good, I don't know how many years, 15, maybe 20 years. And there, the problem also seems to be a common crime. We could and should talk about it, but we haven't been talking about this, but we could. If the US side is prepared to discuss it, so are we.
So his family will find that incredibly distressing to hear you talk about him that way. It does sound, though, as if you would consider some kind of a prisoner swap.
There is nothing offensive about it. He got drunk on vodka and started a fight. There is nothing offensive about it. These things...
Drugs like a vodka. Tala vodka awe theo wera de kluma awe le nemele pura le westro de ma de ko la ma awe yora wa de o ma valaka wa de ko awe chi ke te ya ne ma na awe yo we o we di put it te wa ma kana.
It's happened in life. There is nothing horrible about it. It happens to our men as well. Somebody gulps down some vodka and starts a fight. So you violate the law, you go to prison. What would have happened if he'd fought a cop in your country? He would have been shot dead on the spot, and that's the end of it. Isn't that the case?
And on the prisoner swap question, is that something that you would consider? Are you looking to negotiate? You're meeting with the president.
Yes, of course. Even better would be a discussion of the possibility of entering into an agreement on extradition of individuals who are in prison. This is a standard international practice. We have such agreements with several countries. We are prepared to enter into such an agreement with the United States.
Just to be clear, so we hear it from you, which Russian prisoners in the US would you be hoping to bring back to Russia? By name.
Well, we have a whole list. I've just mentioned our pilot named Yaroslav.
We have a whole list now. But Tamula
It was given
Chado Mama.
rather lengthy sentence. He has some serious health issues, but the prison administration is not paying attention to this. You have mentioned that your citizen has coronavirus, but nobody's paying attention to the health issues of our citizen.
That's
We are
one
prepared
right,
to
right,
discuss these issues.
Yes.
Moreover, it makes sense, as you correctly said, and I completely agree with you. There are matters of humanitarian nature, and why not discuss them as long as they pertain to the health and life of specific individuals and of their families? Of course, sure thing.
Interesting.
Just quickly, before I move on the subject of prisons, again with Alexei Navalny, will you commit that you will personally ensure that Alexei Navalny will leave
Patelo
prison?
dale dipe technology. Redo awan kona wani mane.
Such decisions in
Rasa
this
koi
country are not
no.
made by the president. They're made by the court, whether or not to set somebody free. As far as the health, all individuals who are in prison,
Everybody free.
that is something that the administration of the specific prison or penitentiary establishment
Everybody
is
free.
responsible for. And there are medical facilities in penitentiaries that are perhaps far from the best condition, and they're the ones whose responsibility it is. And I
Interesting.
hope that they do it properly. But to be honest, I have not visited such places for a long time. I did visit one in St. Petersburg some time ago,
Oh,
and that was a very great impression that was made on me by the medical facilities in a prison. But since then, I hope some things have been done to improve the situation. And I proceed from the premise that the person that you have mentioned, the same kind of measures will apply, not in any way worse than anybody else who happens to be in prison. That can be said for sure.
His name is Alexei Navalny. People will note that you
I
weren't
don't
prepared
care.
to say
I don't
that
care.
he would
Look, please listen to me carefully. His name can be anything. He's one of the individuals who are in prison. For me, he's one of the citizens of the Russian Federation who has been found guilty by a Russian court of law and is in prison. There are many citizens like that. By the way, our so-called prison population, the people who are in prison, in the last few years has been reduced by almost 50%, which I consider a big victory for us and a major sign of the fact that our
But
legal system is
don't
becoming
hurt
more humane.
everybody.
So he will not be treated any worse than anybody else. Nobody should be given any kind of special treatment. It would be wrong. Everybody should be in an equal situation. This is called the most favored nation treatment. Not worse than anyone else. And the individual that you have mentioned, that applies to him as well.
I appreciate the extra time, Mr. President. The team has been in quarantine for almost 2 weeks, so this interview is very important to us. I want to ask you about China. China is working on its 4th aircraft carrier. It has 2. Russia has 1, and it's not in service at the moment. China refused to take part in arms control talks last year. You complain so much about NATO to your west. Why do you never complain about China's militarization to your east?
They are friends, you son my gun.
The first thing I want to say is that over the last few years, the last few decades, we have developed a strategic partnership relationship between Russia and China that previously had not been achieved in the history of our two nations. A high level of trust and cooperation in all areas, in politics, in the economy, in technology, and in the area of military and technical cooperation. We do not believe that
Russia có Russia có Putin mà cái đó ta khai nè về lời thế ở bên này có mà nè mà về ra cái đó là mà về ra tam ta khu cái đó mà sao cái đó tao ta lấy chơi đó khao đi nè bởi cái đó là bao là mới đi tao là cái lúa về nuôi chim nuôi cái lúa là tụi về thế mà là phụ thêm mà ra nè anh em không nhớ là phụ trợ nó cái lúa ở đây nuôi cái lúa cái đó nuôi chim nuôi cái lúa nuôi chim nuôi cái lúa sao nuôi chim nuôi cái lúa nè à về tụi về thế mà phụ thêm đã chết rồi à con này đây có ara là bắt đi ara bây giờ cái nắp lấy đi apa cái nắp mua lấy ba cái thứ chăn là cái giờ chơi